Hey guys, it's Chris, and welcome to Toned and Toneful, the self-actualization video podcast, episode number 49. Be bored to move forward. So in this week's episode, guys, we're going to be talking about something that's a little bit counterintuitive. The idea that being bored can actually put us into action or spur us into creativity is not something that a lot of people want to think about in that way. Usually when we think of action, we think of checklists of things to do and our mind being full of creativity to the point that it is just flowing out. But in actuality, for a lot of artists, it's not that way. Many times it could be the most mundane day that our greatest work could be made. It could be the most mentally boring day when we finally create the artwork that we've always been looking to make. So in this week's episode, I want to go over that and why boredom could actually catapult you into some of your best work if you allow the space for your mind to be free and you allow there to be room for creativity in the boredom. First, I want to start off with a musical sense of why this could be a really important idea. Have you ever found yourself, going through your day and listening to the same playlist that you've been listening to? It's been your favorite. It has a whole group of songs that you've picked out, and one day you're just not feeling it. As a matter of fact, that playlist, not only are you feeling, you start going through other music and it just seems that there's nothing new. You're listening to all this different type of music and nothing is really bringing that inspiration for you to create. This is a sign that boredom has now finally maybe struck you to a point. Maybe you've listened to the same playlist too many times. Maybe you're listening to the same genre of music. Maybe you've been trapped in this playlist has been so great to you and so familiar, you haven't realized that slowly over time, the excitement has degraded for that particular playlist, that the particular music you're listening to or artist. It is pretty much undoubtedly we're all going to face burnout with something that we love. We can only go so high into a climax before we reach the summit and go to the other side. And this is something that is kind of not only a true part of life, but a little bit of a sad reality that, maybe our favorite artist can't be our favorite artist our whole life. Or maybe our favorite song can't be our favorite song our whole life in one consistent flow. We might come back to it later. We might learn to reappreciate it for things that we see in it at a different time. But it can't always be the thing that we think it to be, always. So one of the things that I've noticed too is when you play guitar or you're playing your instrument, you might be playing certain patterns, certain scales. There's a certain set of chords that you normally love. But now it's starting to feel really samey. You're starting to move these patterns and these chords around to different keys, and you're like, you know what? All this is starting to really sound the same. And this can be a very disheartening part of playing an instrument or making art. Maybe you're structuring your paintings the same or using the same colors. But no matter what form of art you're doing, you're bound to reach a point where you're bored of what you're doing. These might not really be bad signs. Maybe your brain being bored is actually the beginning of true creativity. A lot of times it's kind of an escape when we're bored to look for something to re-up that excitement. But if we're always wanting to be at a constant level of excitement, it shows that our mental maturity isn't high enough yet to realize that we're allowed to be bored. We're allowed to be tired of songs with the same structures, with the chorus in the same place, or a painting that is living to the rule of thirds all the time, or a photograph that's always done in sepia, and you're starting to get really tired of this maybe romantic feel photo you're taking, or this very vivid, wildlife photos you're taking where there's all color, and you're starting to want something new. It doesn't matter what it is. This is a very, very special point. To let your brain relax to the point that you could find something new is one of the greatest things that you can do. And the reason that this is amazing is you might just be on the precipice of a new level of creativity. How is that, you might ask? Musically, if you want to create something new, we can't be listening to the same things that have already been done or looking at art pieces that have already been done and think that we're going to actually make something new. We're going to borrow from those ideas, but maybe you haven't given it the point where it can actually meld into your mind to create something new. If you've learned parts from some of your favorite artists on guitar, or you've taken the time to reharmonize something that someone has written, it still might sound the same actually in the beginning. But when we take the time to allow boredom to set in, you start actually looking for new things on your instrument, in your art, that you before previously might not have seen. But stillness is what it takes to see the smallest movement. In this kind of aspect, we're almost a hunter at that point. We're looking for, when things are very still, to put our aim to something that will allow us to see the movement that is so small, from the smallest animal in our world, the smallest amount of creativity, that feeling, that nuance that maybe hasn't been touched yet. That could be a texture to a sound. That could be a way of performing physically. But no matter what it is, if you don't allow boredom to strike, sometimes it is hard for actual creativity to truly begin. And funny enough, through that creativity, you'll take action. Hearing that new sound could inspire you a lot more than a new song could have, that you could have listened to 10 times in a row and been burned out on it. Or that little thing that you finally noticed, oh, I'm picking this incorrectly. I've always wanted this speed or this particular technical efficiency. Maybe what you're missing is letting your mind calm down to the point that you can actually see that difference. This is a huge thing. In this way, we are all kind of victims of our own busyness and our desire to be excited. And when we can find a way to mix what has previously been making us inspired with a little bit of our internal, which can only really be seen when we're truly bored, when there's true silence, then we can start to move forward with those kinds of things. On a spiritual level, if you are looking at your creativity and you don't allow boredom, you can never really find your truth. The truth is only a truth to you if you find it within yourself. Many people can tell us little lessons that they've learned in life. And those of us who are smart will try to latch on to these ideas and see what we can make of them in our day-to-day life. This could be talking about efficiency in your work. This could be talking about workflow methods that worked for another artist. And while those are all very, very great pieces of information to have in our life, one of the real important things that would matter more than all of that is the ability to find that truth within yourself. And this is something that can't happen until you're bored. This is something that can't happen until you allow there to be some type of silence that somehow and in some way will bring you to a place that you can finally hear the internal truth that you're hearing. To look at the evidence from your life and go, when I do this or when I do that, I notice this about me. And these truths, while they might be universal to some extent, they're also very particular to who we are as an artist and as a person. So on a spiritual level, allowing that boredom is part of also allowing that boredom musically. There are so many things that you can't see until you allow yourself to be in the stillness and understand that there's other things going on around you that could be bringing you a lot of actual understanding of who you are and your process. Without that quietness, there are a lot of times will just be us taking lists, us doing certain activities, and us doing certain things that it can't really be better for us until we can take that truth and allow it to be in our mindset. So that is something that's really important spiritually, is to allow yourself to have this space until you see a truth. And in this truth, you are also building your storytelling, because storytelling a lot of times comes from the ability to see the moral and to see the characters in our own movie of life, our own drama, our own play. And that doesn't make us always the main character. But what it makes us is a person who can observe from the outside and at the very minimum become the director. Without the ability to observe from the outside and see what's going on, you will have a very hard time directing your life when you're always in it. Like the saying, you can't see the forest from the trees. Sometimes you're too caught up in something to tell the difference that eventually the forest ends. It's not all trees. Everything isn't the same. There's nuance to all of this, and beyond the perspective of what you see, there is more. On a physical sense, boredom is another important thing. Allowing yourself to have a small routine that is healthy for you, even though it is an action, can still lead to boredom. If you're doing things at the same time during the day, whether that's eating your meals at the same time, that is preparing foods in a similar way that have similar macros, practicing the instrument in such a way that certain techniques are dialed in and there's a feeling to playing that way. There's a feeling to doing art with that certain brush. There's a feeling to dancing with those certain shoes on. No matter what it is, that mindset that we're in when we're bored is not actual boredom in the way that you think it is. You are finally in a place where you're comfortable enough to actually have real creativity. This is why I believe that a lot of masters of any craft will constantly say, hey, I do the basics all the time. And it always kind of sounds like a joke. Like you think, okay, like what's the basics? Like, you see a lot of musicians show warm up that they do, and they've been playing for 40 or 50 years. And you're like, that's so easy. I could play that all day and night. Like, why are you focusing on that? But if they were to be in a room with you and do that with you, you might find the inconsistency in your performance. You might find that even though they're playing a basic chord and you play the chord, you might not be getting the same intonation as they are. Maybe you're holding one of the strings harder and one note of that chord runs a little bit sharp all the time for you. Maybe you're noticing that in the way that you play on the piano, that one finger has a dominant sound and you actually can't get all the keys to sound even because you have to understand that the high notes are going to naturally pierce a little bit harder than a low note. And you have to alternate the pressure in how you play to create an even sound. Or vice versa, maybe you're trying to create a very extreme sound and you don't understand that you can't play even in that circumstance. It can't be a consistent playing temperament. These are just a couple examples, and there's infinite amounts of examples in life of where boredom can actually lead you to true creativity. And when you're in a creative stance, you're going to take action. Action is very important. But as we take action, we notice that we can burn out. We notice that in time sometimes we can become tired. And with that boredom in action, sometimes the exact opposite, allowing there to be no action, allowing your brain to get to the point that you go, I wish I was doing something again. I wish that I was feeling creative. You might find that by taking the steps that you know, through your working skills that you've created, through all the things you've listened to and seen, you've finally given your brain a space, your soul a space to process these and show how they are important to you in order to move forward in a way that is actually full of action. I'm pretty sure all of us have had a day that was just a random day that we were doing a project that we were working on and something just clicked off. We went to the next level. The next thing that we went to was immediately a place in our mind and a place in our soul where we could naturally connect to what we were doing. And From what seemed like nothing, a song was written in an hour. From what seemed like nothing, a piece of artwork was created in a single afternoon that was a very new masterpiece in your world that you thought, I might never have created something like this. This is why boredom is very important. This is why allowing space for your mind to feel free and not constantly being on social media, not constantly looking for inspiration from others, but looking internally. In one episode of Toned and Toneful, I did reference how a baby is almost the perfect being. That a baby kind of realizes that there's no judgment and they find all answers internally within themselves. It isn't until other people interject ideas into that baby and other people interject ideas into that child as they grow and they face different levels of, confrontation, different levels of maybe not feeling associated with certain people, and that hurts, that people start creating this external shell that actually isn't a representation of their internal self. They learn to take their internal self and they cage that. And then there's this external person that they feel more people will accept, more people will be around. And in that same way, I believe that overtaking action without taking time to process what is going on actually ends up leading you to become that, and maybe very unintentionally. Some of the greatest artists who are maybe the most self-driven, most self-inspired can easily become somebody who is looking to others for validation, looking to others for, respect that they once didn't need, because they've now gotten a mindset from being around too many people and observing outwardly too much what's going on. So this balance of action and boredom are incredibly important. And it takes a long time, and many people a whole lifetime, to understand the balance in those. But as a keen musician, as someone who listens to music a lot and who's very into the idea of what they're creating, we want to get into this as soon as we can. We want to find this balance of boredom and action that inspires each other. That the action you take far enough until you go, I am just tired, I'm taking a break. And the boredom goes, this break is not feeling like a break anymore. I'm starting to get really tired of this. And it finds a new thing to latch on to. It finds that new inspiration and that new sound, that new look, that new anything, even if it's just you mentally imagining a story and you wanting to use that story as a way to write a song, or you imagining and using that imagination to draw a painting that it hasn't existed in real life. It's not inspired by anything but something that's internal. So remember, guys, as we learn to balance our boredom and our action, we are all going to have learning points that we do too much of one or the other. But it would be better to have done that rather than not exercise both sides of your personality and who you are and your mindset, so you can find that harmonious balance that leads you to being the artist you want to become, that keeps you inspired on a consistent rate, and that keeps you loving the things that you do without you being overboard of a song, or you listen to the playlist too many times, or your life cycle is so consistent you don't have anything to work with outside of your little kind of network that you've created. Sometimes disconnecting allows us to see the forest from the trees and allows us to see that there is a huge landscape in life and our creativity that we could be tapping into. Once again, you guys, if you made it to this point in the episode, please put a 1. I want to reward the people who watch the show the whole way through. I am very excited about Toned and Toneful being back. As always, I will say this every time because my level of gratefulness to be able to speak with you and be healthy in life and offer this to you is absolutely a blessing. So remember, guys, be bored to move forward. Episode 49 of the Toned and Toneful Self-Actualization Video Podcast. I was happy to be here with you guys today. And until next time, stay toned and toneful.